Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. So I'm going to do something about my ancestry and genealogy. I would just like to share with the population. So I'm going to call this video, What is an African American? Because apparently a lot of people don't know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do you a favor and solid and share you my ancestry. So we're going to start here. So I uploaded my DNA to something called trueancestry.com. And I have my kit. I paid a little bit of penny for this. So basically I want to go here and show you my timeline. So I'm an African American born in America, and I'm also adopted, and I am researching my genealogy and putting all the pieces and puzzles together. And I found some amazing information that I would love to share with everybody. And I'm really excited about it because it's giving me identity of who I am and where we come from, which is like everyone's mixed with everything, right? But for African American, there's so many unknowns. So it's like me finding my family all over again, which I did find my family when I was like 12 years old and I reunited with them. But putting this big piece of picture together of our family tree and putting everything is just amazing. And you can do so much more with DNA. So with this My True Ancestry, basically on here, this is my timeline of my DNA. And you can see here ancient Ethiopia is on here, the Ariel Sea, some Laka Cameroon, Mali pastoralists, and then we go to ancient Egyptian. So this is like where my DNA has came from over the time. And I'm African American in America, right? The hunter-gatherers, the Kenyas, we can go over here and I'm going to show you some more. I gotta make my screen a little bit different. Give me a second. And it goes all the way to present day. And I'm going to just break this thing out because it's amazing. So you can see everything on here. We got the Yoruba, we got the Bantu and expansion and all that stuff in there. But what I found out was absolutely phenomenal, which you have to look at your DNA, your admixture, and your family tree. And then once you do that, it makes a lot of sense and it brings all this history to life. And you can research about different cultures and different places that your ancestry was at. And it's absolutely phenomenal, amazing. So on my DNA, when I took a DNA test, yeah, I'm born here, United States. Right now I'm in DC, the DMV area. Yes. And you can see how people Finnish, United Kingdom, Scottish, Spain, Iberian. I'm like, well, what is that? So it's actually the Moors and stuff like that come from there. Then we have Africa, of course, Nigeria, that's the Yoruba, Senegal, Sierra Leone. I even met some people, they say like, you look like people in my family. I'm like, cool. And then India comes up. I'm like, what is that? We have Kenya over here. But look at all these other regions that don't show up. And that's what I want to get more information and basically break down. And the stuff that you can understand that's not going to be in these DNA tests is Native American. Now, there's a thing. We're going to get into it later. I'm not going to bring it up right now. So now we go into My True Ancestry. And now what they do is they can tie your DNA to samples and skeletons, right? So I'm like, I'm paying for this. I want to see what admixture and what skeleton from my ancestor is relative in there. So I have people who have descended from these samples on this map. And guess where they show? In America. I don't know who this was who died in 200 AD, but it's a part of my DNA right now in me came from this person. In 965, I don't know who died there. That's in New Mexico in 965 AD. That's my Native American part. Now, what is a Native American? American, according to the dictionary, the English dictionary, Noah Webster from the 1800s says, American is a Native American usually applied to the aboriginals or copper-colored races found by the Europeans, but now applying this to Europeans born in America. So American is the natives, and they're brown and copper color. Let's go back. It's going to get good. So in here we have this Yoruba person here from some kind of chlorophyll victim, but we go to Aztecs. We have 1545. What was happening? All these Native Americans were dying because what the Spanish came and did everything. They're right here. That's Mexico City. Now, how did that happen? So there's my Native American parts. Then we have Yoruba here. 1600s, of course, you know, the pirates of the Caribbean don't really talk about all the slave trade that they were pirating. It wasn't gold, it was slaves, tobacco, wine, and everything else. So we have Yoruba right here. Where is that? So it's pretty information. It's awesome information that makes your DNA come to life. And I looked up this, and this is actually the Choco people. There's a whole town that was built here. You can go out to New Mexico and see it, and the Choco people are right here. It is phenomenal information. So there, now we're going to get into more information right here. The other thing I wanted to bring up, if I can find it. So this thing gives me my deep dive samples, new matches. Okay, so it says my Y-DNA matches, awesome. We have here Ramses. We have the same royal haplogroup, which is pretty sweet. And then we have the Mexico City slave trade victim who was enslaved, the natives. And if you click on this information, it's showing Yoruba and Kozan. So they weren't doing these people were already there. So the Yorubas and Kozans were already there in 1545. They weren't bringing them over, they were there. Let's think about that. The Moor Caliphate. This is also my DNA as well. You can see the Moors. Andulus. And if you research Andulus, you'll figure out who he is. But the Moors have been over here too. That's pretty awesome information. And this just saying all this stuff. Oh, here's an important one. Egypt. Because a lot of people say blacks try to claim Egypt. We can. I personally can because my DNA, I'm actually in this group because my DNA comes from this person from this DNA kit in ancient Egypt. And I'm going to bring up two of the people that's on here. So my DNA also comes from, I have like a high percent of ancestry to this person. This person is like an ancestor of mine. And it's from this tomb of the two brothers, Duret, Egypt, and this is the 12th dynasty. So one of these brothers, I'm actually tied to this ancient DNA kit because they have a sample DNA and they run a kit, and that's actually part of my DNA, which is freaking sweet. We have another one of Egypt. This is farther Egypt. Of this one, this is Ptolemaic Egypt. Now, there's Ptolemaic Egypt. There's another one on here. Where is it at? Because he's older. I gotta find them. With the Tomb of the Brothers. That's one of the person. That's another person on there that have DNA too, which is pretty sweet. I'll close that out. And then we'll go up here. We're gonna go back to maps so that you can see that information on there. There's the ancient Egypt on there. And then what I wanted to talk about is we have that ancient Egypt and we have that kit. Okay, so yeah, this is one of the samples. Oh, this is what I say. This is the sample that they found of one of my ancestors that I have like a high percent of my DNA came from this ancestor. And they're basically saying that Ptolemaic Egypt between this time, like before Cleopatra, like it's one of the Cleopatra era times DNA from this area, which is like freaking phenomenal. So like DNA, what is an African American? A whole bunch of different things. We're also, you know, a lot of stuff. You've seen the Finnish in my background and the Polish and the European and all the other stuff. I found a relative, which is like, when I found this relative when I was doing my family tree, it basically made me sick. It made me sick to my stomach. But we're going to talk about him today. John Tomlinson, this is my 7th great-great-grandfather who's probably rolling around in his grave that I'm talking about this today. He was responsible for a slave voyage that basically helped enslave 20,000 people back and forth from London to Lancashire, Europe, to South Carolina. It's freaking phenomenal to imagine that one person was able of enslaving 20,000 human people, but he was going back and forth, shifting left and right. But the thing you got to think about, they were also capturing tons of natives here and sending them back and forth. So I'm not sure these people all came from Africa. Some of them did, but I think majority of them came from here, because if you look at the Indian wars that were going on and fighting, a lot of those people, they didn't disappear. They were enslaved. And you have to check your history records to see who was enslaved and where they're at. So this man was responsible, phenomenal family that is worth billions of dollars today. Tomlinson, if you see that name, like someone who's probably like my great cousin is like a multi-billionaire based off the blood and money that this country's been founded off of slaves. Wow. So with that, this nation was born off of blood and sacrifice and slavery. I mean, basically, you know, everything is built on the banks, the funding, everything. I'm not going to go more in depth than that, but it just makes me sick to my stomach. Anyway, that's a part of American history. So this is the European part that I found. And there's also some people I met online through 23andMe, which was from the Liverpool language area. So he definitely is a direct descendant. Through 23andMe, through DNA, they are my cousins, and they're 100% European. It's amazing. We're all related to everybody in some kind of way. So now I'm going to go into, if you're African American and you want to find your Native American, I'm going to recommend that you read a book called 500 Nations. It's a phenomenal book. I got it on my stand, 500 Nations, or you can watch it on YouTube. If you have any Native American ancestry, they were fighting because their people were enslaved. They fought for years and everything was taken away from them. And you're going to find out that you have a lot of Native American. Like, I was trying to track a couple of slaves and I found a ton of Native American. I found Choctaw, Creek, and Cherokee. And if you're in the South Carolina and if you're in the Indian territories and you have members in there, you need to go to the Dollar's Wars and look. And I'm going to show you how to do that really quick. So what I found on here when I was researching my ancestry, Vicey, this is my third great grandparent. Like, this is how close, she's full blood. So like, this is a full blood. This is not like seventh generation. This is like great great grandma, like, has this. And she was full blood in the 1900s on the census. They denied her. They said that she was 3/4, but by the time she died, she went to the Cherokee Nation and petitioned, the Choctaw Nation and petitioned, and they finally put it in her will that she was full blood Cherokee. And the reason why they denied her is because of the color. So if you were too light or too dark, they put Negro. If you weren't, then they would put you as full blood. But technically, she was fine the whole time. Like, I am full blood Indian the whole time. And when she passed away, on this will, it says she's been reinstated as full blood Choctaw Indian. And that's phenomenal, because on these census rolls, 1 year it will be Native American, born on the native territory. The next year, they're labeled as Negro or mulatto. So you have to really look between the 1900s to the 1910s, because they do a switch. The census does a switch, and they just, because of the laws and everything, they just group them all together. So it's phenomenal. So how you do the Indian census rolls is, I'm going to show you one here. No, we're not going to do that. So you would go to this Oklahoma History Society, and then it's called okhistory.org. You put the name in, and then you can search by tribe. And I found Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, Seminole. And you research all your relatives. If they are in Mississippi, South Carolina, North Carolina, and in the 1900s, they are living in the Indian territory, most likely they're Indian. So you need to do the research and find out, because it's not going to show up in your ancestry, because a lot of these Native Americans are... I know this is a lot for me to say right now, but a lot of these Native Americans are actually brown. And they're related to the Bantu culture, which is also related to the Mexico culture, which is also related to the Egyptian culture. And a lot of people are not going to be able to handle this information, but you have to do your research and find out. But I'm going to say it anyway. People are going to hate me for saying this. A lot of the people here, again, Native America, originally applied to the originals, copper color races found here by the Europeans, now applied to descendants of Americans are born. So a lot of the copper color people here are really Native Americans. That's going to blow your mind. And once it gets even more, I'm just going to say it anyway, people are going to hate me. But once you research all that stuff and figure out who the Native Americans are, you're going to find out a whole bunch of stuff about how Egypt and the Native Americans are related. And then you're going to find a lot of stuff about what God they believed in and who the Great Spirit was and how they walked around saying, hallelujah, hallelujah, instead of, hi, how are you? Hi, how... I'm not even gonna go. I'm done. That you have to find that information. So that's how you find the Choctaw. I'm just joking. Don't take me seriously. This is just my ancestry stuff. All I do is listen and read to historic stuff on the weekends, because I love this stuff and I'm fascinated by it. So yeah, you type in your name. I found my relative's name. I did the Choctaw tribe. You can do all tribes, but the list is going to be massive. I'm going to do Choctaw. I didn't even know who the Choctaw were. Here's her name. That is my